NAEH, National Alliance of Ending Homelessness, will be doing a training or webinars throughout until the PID count. So you can always go on their websites to make sure that you are accessing these things and getting all the information that you need to make sure that this is a successful PID count for you, for the homeless youth in 2017. So that's it. I can always answer questions if you guys have any when you...
That's awesome. Awesome, thank you, Olu. That's some really great information. I think that it's stuff that everybody you may be aware of some of those resources that are in our community, but engaging folks who are really working with homeless youth populations, and just so we're clear about what we're talking about with homeless youth, it may vary from community to community. What range of ages you're looking at. In some locations, you may actually be talking about homeless and runaway youth that are actually minors who are unaccompanied. In some cases, it may be folks that are 18 to 24 years old. That's still counted as the as a youth population according to HUD. And so we are just getting a question, Olu. It's a question about the website that you referred to with the resources. Which one were you talking about? Was it National Alliance to End Homelessness? Okay, so Olu's on mute, but yes, it's endinghomelessness.org, I believe, or endhomelessness.org. If you search for National Alliance to End Homelessness, you can find those resources there.
Hi, yes, and there's also the National Network for Youth, NN4Y. They are also going to be holding a webinar as well. You just have to kind of keep up with the dates and when that's going to happen.
Sure, and we also got a question about the list of the locations and resources and potential partners that Olu just mentioned. So when we release this, PowerPoint presentation for you all to refer to, I'll make sure that we add a slide in with all of those bullet points that Olu was kind enough to share, so that you guys can refer to it visually as well if you didn't have time to take all those notes down. So we'll make sure we share that with you when we put this PowerPoint out. Okay, so thank you, Olu. That's awesome. Do remember that this is a baseline year for HUD to count homeless youth. So really what they're looking for is a greater emphasis on trying to identify this difficult sometimes to find population. Okay, so let's get down to some of the nuts and bolts again of the point-in-time process this year. So if you're interviewing or trying to reach out to unsheltered persons, we are not going to be pulling HIMIS data from outreach programs. So anyone who's unsheltered on the night of the count will be counted and their information recorded using a paper survey that will then be uploaded. Information will be uploaded into SurveyMonkey. For sheltered folks, anyone who's in emergency shelter, transitional housing, or safe haven programs, if that program is in HMIS, basically all the provider has to do is to update their HMIS to reflect the night of the count. So, as soon as possible following the night of the count, make sure that the consumer information is up to date and their census is correct. If the provider is not in HMIS, like I alluded to earlier with domestic violence programs or others, Code Blue shelters, then we do need to have a paper survey for each consumer that is being served on the night of the point-in-time count to make sure that their information is recorded and then uploaded into SurveyMonkey. Also, this is something that I'll go over again in a subsequent slide, but just to remind you as the point-in-time coordinators, every shelter program, so we're talking about emergency shelter and transitional housing, safe havens, even some communities choose to do their permanent supportive housing programs. We're going to be asking you as the point-in-time coordinator to help emphasize a shelter summary form for each of those programs. So what this form is, it's a very short form I'll show you in a moment, and it's really just to help us confirm and compare what we're pulling in either SurveyMonkey or HMIS to what that program's informal census or their logbook or whatever other record they have other than what was counted shows in their program, so that we don't have any discrepancies and we make sure we deduplicate accurately. Okay, and then anyone at risk of homelessness, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that this is not a group that's off limits for the count, right? The point in time count is not just looking at folks who meet the federal definition of homelessness. That's what we report to HUD, and that's what we put in our NJ counts reports that Monarch releases. But we also want to make sure that you as a community can use this tool as an opportunity to look at folks who are at risk or on the cusp of homelessness as well. So housing insecurity, folks who are doubled up, folks who may be within a hair's breadth of becoming homeless or evicted. This is a group that may be seeking some of the same services as those who meet the literal definition of homelessness, and there's no restriction on doing a survey for someone who is at risk of homelessness or is experiencing a doubled up or overcrowded housing situation. That is something that we would definitely encourage you to continue to collect this information. Monarch doesn't get rid of that data. We share with you every piece of data that is collected in the point in time count from your community. So it's an opportunity for you to really see who is trying to access these various services, if you're doing service-based counts, and then who is in your community in a housing crisis. Okay, so just make sure that you do know that anyone who's at risk of homelessness, even though we won't be using HMIS to collect information about them, you can certainly continue to encourage your staff, your volunteers, and your agencies to collect paper surveys for those who are in that at-risk situation. Okay, this is that shelter summary form I was alluding to. You can see on the bottom, we are asking that you help us corral every agency that has a shelter or transitional housing program, safe haven, especially to make sure that they provide this form. You can see there's a spot for multiple different programs. So if it's an agency that has a shelter and a transitional housing program, we just make sure that we get the information of what their HMIS program name is. If it, since this is to compare HMIS data to what we have in the agency's own inner records, we want them to share with us the information about the total number of people that were served on the night of January 24th, 2017. That's the night of the count. Okay, the reason being is, let's say for instance that on the night of the 24th, we have in HMIS that Shelter A served 25 people, but Shelter A in their logbook has 26 people. Right? For some reason, when we pulled the HMIS information, they had not updated their information. So we want to make sure that this is just a check and balance to ensure that we have the correct information. You can see it's very simple and short, just county, agency name, program name, HMIS name, and the number of folks for each of the programs that the agency may have. So there's one form per agency, and you can see that it's pretty simple. We are going to really emphasize this. This has been very helpful in the past couple of years that we've implemented it. So you as point in time coordinator, we're going to ask you to be the point person on helping to collect these forms and relay the information, maybe just forwarding on that information to Monarch so we can make sure that we're comparing the data in HMIS to what an agency thinks we should be receiving in their HMIS in terms of who's in there. So I do have a question here about the at-risk data. We do not provide any kind of differential analysis of the at-risk population. If you have any question though about what person we counted as at risk and what person we counted as homeless and why that is, we can certainly go over that. It's based on where they stayed on the night of the count. So we just provide the raw data to you in the community about those at-risk populations. But you are able to, if you want some guidance on how to sort that, you can let us know following the count. It should be pretty simple to differentiate that and look at that population in more detail. Okay, so moving along, training. Okay, this is one of the real key things that we ask you as point in time coordinators to help us with. We usually and hope to again schedule trainings for early in the month of January. Thank you to those of you who have already reached out to me regarding those dates. I'm still vetting those with our team to make sure that we can have someone available to do those trainings. We do physical trainings in each community pretty much every year. So that's the date that I'm talking about arranging with us. Look at your schedule for the first couple of weeks of January and see if there's an opportunity for you to host a training for your various providers and volunteers so that Monarch can come, and we usually do a PowerPoint presentation. We usually try to have the materials provided like the survey and our quick reference guide with some definitions, an abbreviation list, and those types of things that'll really help your volunteers do the best that they can. This survey is not a simple survey for someone who's uninitiated with the homeless services or the CoC process, so we try to explain it as detailed a way as possible. So please make sure you reach out to us as soon as you can get your committee or your group around a scheduled date in January. There are materials that you can refer to when I was talking about you helping your community define its methodology and the way that it's going to do its count. You can see that there's a PIT methodology guide and a HIC and PIT data collection guide. So PIT is point in time count. HIC is housing inventory chart. Basically, that's a list of all the different types of housing and shelter and transitional housing that's available to homeless persons in your community. We have to submit that data to HUD in conjunction with the point in time count. So it's important if you wanted to check out the way that those two are related. It's very important to keep that in mind. We are going to do an online training webinar, which is basically what you're doing right now, but for everyone who wants to be involved in volunteering or implementing the point in time count with you. That training is going to be scheduled for January 6th as of now. It's a Friday. And we will send you out that link once we have created the webinar materials. Again, we're still updating our training materials to make sure it's in line with the new data standards and the HIC and PIT guidance this year. And then we always make available a practice survey via SurveyMonkey for each of your communities. So if there's anybody who's going to be entering the data and hasn't done it in the past, they're not sure about the interface or the portal to enter this data, we make that available, and our target date is to make that available in the second week of December, December 12th through January 16th. So about a month of access to that. If anybody wants to do practice surveys, it won't impact our numbers. It's just so you can get a handle and be ready to go for those couple of weeks that we have to enter data after the count. Okay. Here is our timeline for the various phases of our point in time count in data collection. Okay, so you can see that we are talking about paper surveys, HMIS data, and the summary survey form. That was that form that has the comparison of what each program thinks they had in terms of folks in their programs versus what we're pulling from HMIS. So you can see here we have on the data collection side for paper survey, obviously we're doing those surveys on the night of the count, asking about January 24th into 25th of 2017. You can confirm that data collection timeframe locally. Like I said, you could also be doing surveys as late as February 1st if you're going to do a 7-day service-based count. So make sure your agencies are all on the same page there. And then the paper survey information must be inputted in SurveyMonkey by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 8th. That's 2 weeks worth of opportunity to enter the SurveyMonkey data, so we really ask that you stick to this timeline. We will not be granting extensions unless there is a situation like we had a couple years ago with crazy weather situations where our point in time counts are delayed. So please make sure that everybody has that. It'll be on all our materials. February 8th, that's the deadline for submitting our SurveyMonkey records, so getting those paper surveys uploaded into the system. And just a note down here for those of you who are working with your Board of Social Services to do some surveys for maybe programs that are monthly programs. So if you're talking about at-risk folks who may be in a TRA, even though they won't be counted as homeless, just make sure that you know that you can flag that date a week before the point in time count. January 18th, we will open SurveyMonkey's live link for you to have access in those programs. But that's a very limited basis. Very few people have to take advantage of that. And most folks will just be operating on that day of the count or through the following week. Okay? So just a flag for those of you who that's relevant for. For HMIS data, the deadline that we're hoping is that everyone will be able to update their information on the day of the count for the 24th into the 25th, so updating on the 25th. We will be doing our first HMIS poll on Thursday, January 26th, just to look at it, and then we will be doing a poll on the 27th of January to actually do the comparison for verification. So basically, that Friday, the 27th, we have to have all data up to date by the day before so that our poll on the 27th is going to be accurate. So we're going to be doing that HMIS poll and then comparing it to what we receive here on the summary survey forms so that we can verify the data with your various agencies, and you as the point-in-time coordinator as well will be part of that conversation. Okay, the Wednesday, February 8th deadline is if there are any discrepancies in what we've pulled on January 27th, we'll be working with you and making sure that your agencies update that HMIS data by the February 8th. That's 2 weeks after the date of the count deadline. So just to answer a question, yes, all of this information on the PowerPoint will be available. I think what we're going to do is probably post it on our website and email you out a link. So just so you know, this will be available for you. What we also have here is in the summary survey form, that was that form that we talked about earlier. We're also asking that that be done as quickly as possible after the count. So we're talking about Thursday, January 26th. That's the day after the day of the count to collect those forms, because that's what we're going to be able to compare our poll against on that Friday, the 27th. So please earmark that day and put a star by it. This is one of the trickiest parts of our point-in-time count that we get, you know, various levels of participation in, and we really want to ask you as our coordinators to help us beat the drum. You know, really just a simple form that folks can do to help us make sure that our data is accurate when we're pulling it from HMIS. Okay, so that deadline is again Thursday the 26th, so that we can do our HMIS poll on the 27th. All right, so community liaisons. Basically, this is a press contact, right? So we ask you as the coordinator to work with your community starting now to really make sure you know, in addition to all the partners you had, like Olu was saying, with youth partners and maybe having a point person for youth, maybe having a point person for outreach, any of those designations that you're doing, make sure that part of your idea of who your team is for the point in time count includes how you're going to be communicating information to anyone from the press who has an inquiry, anyone from the community or local municipal or county, you know, inquiries. Basically, we just want to make sure that you know that this is something every year that Monarch works to try to keep folks aware of so that we maximize participation and the accuracy of the point in time count. And a lot of times that generates some attention from the press. And even though it may be another thing to juggle for you as a point in time coordinator, if that's not something that you or your agency is comfortable in doing, make sure that you work with someone in your community to ensure that you're able to communicate point in time information about events to the various press you know, inquiries that you may receive, or any questions that, you know, anyone has. We also suggest to you very strongly that you as the coordinator make sure that you provide PIT surveys to agencies that have the codes pre-populated. So like I said, we're going to be sending you a list of the agencies and the codes that we've had for the point in time count in past years. We ask that you would pre-populate those surveys and send them to the agencies. You know, if you're able to do that, what it's going to do is reduce any confusion among, you know, the surveys that come back, so that we have, you know, an accurate sorting process when everything's entered into SurveyMonkey. Again, please make sure that those shelter summary forms are collected, and you guys can collect them as the coordinators and then submit them to Monarch, forward them on. And then again, just coordinate media outreach and response. Like Olu had said, I think one of the things that some communities have tried in the recent years and that has been effective is social media outreach, making sure that each agency is coordinating, you know, how this event, if you're having a Project Homeless Connect, or the point in time count in general, is communicated, so people know if there are any resources available or any opportunities to receive services or get linkage to housing if they need it. Okay? And then follow-up. You as the point-in-time coordinator, if this is your first time, we do a deduplication process that is not just Monarch figuring it out behind the scenes. We work with you as the community leaders to make sure that when we provide you with a duplicates list and a description of the issues that have arisen in these duplications, that we make sure that we work with you and your agencies to deduplicate as necessary, but not to, you know, artificially make executive decisions. We want to make sure that we're looking at each individual case and making sure that the data is accurate. Basically what we do is we provide you with a spreadsheet that has a list of all of the entries that look like they are duplicates. We use a generation of a unique identifier for each record, including age, gender, and some other factors, so that we can deduplicate. We will also host a webinar for you all as the coordinators to help you go through that list and make sure we tell you all of the different things that we're looking at in the data. And then we also have that data cleanup process. So make sure that as a coordinator that you know if you have a couple of team members that can look at the data for these duplicates. It's really, really helpful to try to think about that up front and say, okay, we know we're going to get a spreadsheet with some issues. Who are the people in our community that can help us decipher what needs to be deduplicated if there are any questions? Because I can tell you that if it's just you or it's just one person that's looking at it, it can be a little bit much to go through, especially if you're not familiar with each project or component type and their HIMSS data. You know, it's not a complex situation really. It's really just about making sure that we have a good perspective across you know, our community to make those decisions. Okay. This is what I had also said with the media contacts. If you are identifying those folks, we are also going to host a webinar for media contacts. We do a press advisory. We make sure we let everyone know what Monarch is talking about in our messaging around the point in time count and J counts. Kate Kelly in Monarch's office is the one that is spearheading that effort again this year. That's her email address, kkelly@monarchhousing.org. Please email her if it is going to be someone other than yourself who is going to be the point-in-time media contact for your community. You can also email me if you have that information, but Kate is really the one that's going to be reaching out to your media contacts and providing them with the press advisory and press release templates for you, and then also making sure that they are the person that is going to be contacted in your community should any local press be interested. And we have not established the final date for the webinar that Kate does every year to help everybody walk through the press advisory and so forth, but it's probably going to be sometime in the second week of January, and we'll send you that date and a link to how to register to that webinar as soon as we have it available.
That's all that Mark is.
All right, so that's the conclusion of our webinar here today. Some next steps that Monarch will be going through, as I alluded to earlier, we are finalizing our PIT materials and our training guides our survey to be in accordance with our the HIC and PIT guidelines that HUD has released and the new HIMIS data standards. That work is ongoing, and we are going to make sure to get you that information as soon as possible. Hopefully, we believe by the end of this month, and so you can look for that. We're also working on scheduling that update meeting or webinar for you in November to see if there's any challenges ongoing, and then also scheduling that media event in the second week of January. Please make sure you're in touch with us about any questions you may have. This is, you know, the njcounts@Monarch Housing address. You can email any point in time questions there. It does not go to an inanimate inbox. It goes directly to me. So I will get that, and that is my phone extension on the screen. Once again, you can reach me there. It's an actual person, and if it's not me getting back to you, it will be someone from Monarch getting back to you as soon as we can about your questions. There's our website. I don't see any further questions in our sidebar. If you do have them, put them in there in the next 10 to 15 seconds. Otherwise, I'm going to invite everyone to look for this PowerPoint when we send out the information, and to pass it along to anyone on your team that's going to be helping you coordinate this point in time effort, especially paying attention to those dates that we alluded to and the procedures for the various forms, including the shelter summary form. So we will continue to be in touch with you as soon as we can about materials, about these upcoming dates, and please reach out to us if you're looking at the dates for scheduling an in-person point in time count training with Monarch personnel in your community. And thank you. I really appreciate your making yourselves available, and we will let you know when this information is going to be publicly viewable. All right? Thank you so much, and have a great, great morning.